Hello, welcome to American Christian or Christian American. This is episode 11. I am Sean Legacy and I'm your host. If you haven't seen some of my previous videos, I really encourage you to go back to episode 1 and work your way up because I've built a history to understand uh, different historical facts that went through to build up to this. While you can still get an impact from watching this right now, there are so many other things that are important to put into focus in order to understand it. If you want to watch this now and then go back, you can do that. But I would strongly encourage you to look at the background where I started with. I was a little new, so I may not be as proficient. I'm getting a little bit better, but I would encourage you to look at it. Today, we're going to talk about a horrific story. I'm going to read the story to you. You'll have it on the screen. Um, Concerning horrific things that have happened in this history of this country, uh, and how it was taken, how it happened by religious people. Many religious people approved of this event that was just terrible. Now, I've seen a lot of good authors writing great books and historic articles, things that really talk about history. And yes, there's a lot of great African American artists out there. But if you're one of those people who have a doubt, thinking, well, they can kind of push history towards what they want it to be, what I'm going to talk about today is written by a white artist. So it's harder for you to excuse. I mean, I don't have a problem with anybody who writes about the truth. But if you have a problem, it comes from a book called White Too Long, written by a white man. And he's talking about some pretty tough stuff. The whole book is great. And I will pull different things from this book at different times. But this is one story that really stands out, is really chilling. And so that's what we're going to get to today. Get this book, you can either get it paperback or you can get it online. It's called White Too Long, The Legacy of White Supremacy in America. This particular story is on page 28. You can also get it in Kindle version, which is what this is here. We'll start reading here. One of the most chilling demonstrations of the compatibility of white Protestant Christianity with the racial violence of redemption was the lynching of Samuel Thomas Wilkes, a black Georgia farm hand, on the third Sunday after Easter in 1899. Wilkes, who was referred to as Sam Hose or Sam Holt in contemporary news accounts, was accused of murdering Alfred Cranford, a prominent white planter, without cause as he ate dinner with his family. According to the white newspaper accounts, meanwhile, church was also letting out in Newman, just as Wilkes was escorted off the train by his captors, who were delivering him to the jail to collect their reward. The Atlanta Journal noted that the spontaneous and solemn procession formed behind Wilkes and his captors. As church people were leaving their churches, Wilkes made it safely to the jail, but before he was locked in the cell, the crowd threw the bailiff aside, seized the suspect, put a chain around his neck, and brought him back outside. The scene was abruptly shifted from a solemn order to enthusiastic cheering chaos. Before the awful carnivalesque violence erupted, there was one moment of truth. Although there was no record of any Christian clergy addressing the crowd, as they reached the town, square, and courthouse, they were confronted by two community leaders, former Governor William Yates Atkinson and Judge Alvin D. Freeman. Both had probably also just come from worship services. Atkinson from Presbyterian Church and Freeman from the Baptist Church. From the courthouse steps, Atkinson pleaded with the crowd not to disgrace their state by circumventing the courts and taking the law into their own hands. This appeal created a momentary silence, but when someone yelled, "Burn him," mayhem ensued. Atkinson managed to regain a hearing for one final fallback plea, conceding that he would not deter the mob from their plans. He pushed for a change of venue. Atkinson threatened to testify against everyone he knew if the crowd carried out the lynching. In the midst of our homes here in the city, with a roar of agreement, the mob lurched into action, giving that these events occurred on a Sunday, just as worshippers were leaving church. It is striking to note the conspicuous absence of religious opposition to the mob violence. Central Baptist Church was a prominent newly built structure, and its central location provided a viewing area for many of the swirling events. Historian Edward Arnold noted the flow from the church benedictions to the lynching procession. Members who had attended the Sunday morning services now stood on the steps watching or joined the procession as it is passed by. Certainly, local clergy would have been aware of what was happening, yet there was no record that any clergyman addressed the crowd. For Atkinson's part, facing the tinderbox of intimate mob violence, he would undoubtedly have reached for the most powerful radical weapon at his disposal. But just moments after a significant portion of the crowd had shared pews, observed communion, read the Bible, and sang hymns and listened to a sermon, Atkinson appealed not to Christian principles and morality, but rather to the rule of law and his best strategy for dispensing the crowd. The ex-governor must have instinctively understood that white Christianity, as it was believed and practiced by his fellow townspeople, was perfectly compatible with the mob lynching of a black man. As the throng left the town square, Wilkes was paraded down the central business district to the Central Baptist Church. There was a procession changed direction and moved past the cemetery out of town, ultimately stopped at the edge nearby field, which was chosen to allow a large viewing area. Along the way, at each corner, Wilkes had held aloft periodically for everyone to see, resulting in loud cheers from the crowd. At this sight, he was stripped naked, and a chain was wrapped around his body from neck to foot, locked around his chest, and attached to a tree. The limbs and the railroad ties were laid at his feet, and young boys scavenged for additional brush to add to this. Before the fire was lit, Wilkes was tortured for a half hour. His ears were cut off, his fingers were removed one by one, and his genitals severed, with each held up for the approval of the cheering crowd. With Wilkes in agony but alive, he was doused with kerosene and it was lit. At this point, he screamed his last words, "Sweet Jesus." Wilkes struggled against the flames, breaking the chain and lunging forward, at which point several whites pushed him back into the flames with large pieces of timber and pinned him down until he died. While the intensity of the violence and suffering caused some of the crowd to look away, it also inspired expressions of religious ecstasy, reminiscent of revival meetings. "Glory," an old man in the crowd was recorded saying, "Glory be to God." But even Wilkes' gruesome death didn't fully satisfy the frenzied crowd. The Atlanta Constitution described the aftermath in the visual detail. After the smoldering ashes scattered the place, a blackened stake are all that is left to tell the story. Not even the bones of the Negro were left in the place, but were eagerly snatched by a crowd of people drawn from here all directions, who almost fought over the burning body of the man, carving it with knives and seeking souvenirs of the occurrence. So after reading this story, what do you think? These are people who are supposed to be Christians. These are people who are supposed to be God-fearing, God-loving. There was no love here, no kindness, no anything. And even if Crawford's story, or even Wilkes' story, had been told the true way, that he was defending himself, a black man didn't have the right to defend himself. He probably would have been killed anyway. He couldn't defend himself against a white man. A white man had the right to do anything he wanted to do to him. But these are Christian people. And the stories went up, build up, and build up, and build up, and got worse. And it does say that some turned their heads. Most of them didn't. And after the man's body was burnt all up, just small fragments of his body was left. People wanted a piece of it for a souvenir that they attended this lynching, and they were so happy about it. This is what Christianity has been like in the United States and throughout the world. It's not true Christianity. True Christians don't act like this. But my friends here, we have got this same type of attitude today. You may not see openly these things happening, but we have white supremacy and white Christian nationalism in this country today. So far, we haven't seen perhaps as open, but these people care nothing about anybody or anything but their own power, their own greed, and being white. This is sick. This is ungodly. Stand for God. Don't stand for this. Stand for what God is about, not this. Do not connect yourself to Christian nationalism. If you're connected, find a way to leave. This is not about God. This is about evil. This is about Satan. This is about hatred. Let me say it again. God created all of us, and we are all equal. To treat anybody like this is horrific. It is disgusting. It is hateful. It is cruel. And doesn't make any sense. I am not better than anybody. I'm not inferior either. Now, people do wrong, and hopefully I do right in most situations, but people do wrong. Well, guess what? They're still human beings. I don't want to be part of any church that teaches hatred. I want to be part of a church that teaches what God taught, love. And we're going to be talking about this. I've got some videos that are getting ready to produce. We'll talk about those things as well. We're not going to just talk about the horrific things that happen. We're also going to talk about what the church should be. And I'll be putting those in. But we have a lot of history to talk about. We have to face up to what's out here. If we're to get a full understanding of the monstrous, horrific things that are going on, we cannot believe people like Donald Trump. You voted for a man, Donald Trump, who is nothing like a Christian at all. And yet you say he's the man for God? That's not so. Those people voted for Donald, those core people who say that he is the man of God. These are the same people, the same notions that would burn a man, chop his body to pieces while he's alive, and burn him to death, torture him to death, and pick up his genitals and his other parts of his body and hold them up to a cheering crowd. That is what white Christian nationalism is about. Elon Musk doesn't care anything about you. He cares about improving his profit. He'll starve children to death. He'll take away your Social Security, all these things. He doesn't care about God. He acts like he is God. We need to be true Christians. And if you don't want to be a Christian, is there some sense of understanding that this is not what human beings should be about? Because this is evil. This is absolutely horrific. We need God in our lives. God can enrich our lives. We do not need this kind of hatred. We cannot allow this. Well, that's over. Well, it's not as over as you think. And we're moving backwards in this nation. We are moving backwards to more segregation, more subjugation. All these other countries are opposing us. Wake up. This is not done. This is not over and has never been over. Yes, there have been some improvements, but we've angered the people who've made improvements, but the other people are angry because they don't want us to have them. Barack Obama was elected president. Praise God. But guess what? They hate him so much. This is really a retaliation for Barack Obama being president, a black man being president. This is retaliation because white people can't handle that they're losing control, they're losing power, that they don't have the ability to be supreme and superior. None of us are superior. We are human beings that love, care for each other. We are human beings that need to stand together. And I hope we'll stand together with God, but if not that, we still need to stand together as human beings and say this is wrong, that all people need to be treated right. Until the next time.